Hello, everyone. Welcome to All Things Pilates. I'm Darian Gold. Arms come down. Make sure that front leg is bent and reach up, 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 up. Good. And again. And exhale and deepen your exhale as the carriage comes in. Today, I am so excited to share with you a very special guest. Her name is Mary Bowen, and she is the eldest of the Pilates Elders, still going strong after 61 years of practicing and teaching Pilates. When Mary was 29 years old, she discovered Joseph Pilates while scanning a New York City newspaper and saw an article about him. He was being interviewed about his exercise studio and his Contrology method. What caught Mary's eye was the accompanying photo of a man of medium height, barelegged, bare-chested in tight shorts, canvas shoes, and a lion-like mane of white hair. Something else kept Mary's attention. "I base my whole method on the baby and the cat," Joe said. Mary had no baby and no cat, but her intuition told her she needed to go meet him. And that was 61 years ago. For 6.5 years, twice a week, Mary took the train from New Haven, Connecticut to New York City to learn from Joe and his partner Clara. But Joe's rules were a bit unusual. All new students began their studies with a teacher named Hannah. After a number of lessons, students were expected to remember what they were taught, work on their own, and every so often, Joe or Clara would give a specific cue or teach a new exercise. This was a place of serious work, and only serious students stayed. Joe's way of helping each person to connect with the whole body became a way of life for Mary. But when Joe was too ill to teach, she went on to study with many of his other students, Bob Seed, Romana Krzyzanowska, Kathy Grant, and Bruce King. Mary also dived deeply into Jungian analytic psychology. And similar to her Pilates trajectory, first as a student and now a teacher, Mary's decades of learning about herself through extensive Jungian explorations have continued as a Jungian analyst for the last half a century. What Mary brings to the Pilates industry is a unique skill set. Not only to have had the great fortune to work with Joe and Clara, but her Jungian analysis education inspired a blending of these two disciplines. For the last 25 years, Mary has combined Pilates and Jungian analysis into her own singular approach to Pilates, called Pilates plus Psyche. I think you'll agree that Mary is like no other guest I've had. Just a quick note, as online interviews become more and more common, there's a learning curve with technology, and you'll hear some of that curve with today's podcast. Mary, thank you so much for joining us today.
You just said everything, so I don't need to speak. I'll just show my face and you told the story.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It's so lovely
You're
to
welcome.
meet you face to face now.
Nice to be here.
Obviously, you are having an interesting life. But way back when, 61 years ago, what was it about the Pilates method that attracted you in the first place?
Well, I didn't know there was a Pilates method because nobody knew it. And I just saw that article and I knew I needed to do something for a back that would occasionally go out of a disc would go out. And then I would be flat on my back in traction and then the disc would go in. But I had it happen with my neck. I had it happen with my low back. And I thought, this is not a good prognosis for what I'd be like at 40. So I thought I don't know what, and nobody was doing conditioning at that point. I was in theater and I was busy dancing when you needed to dance, and that would depend on the show I was in. And so nobody was really, since 1970, when Jack LaLanne came in and was on TV, you could say that's when America began to attend everywhere in the country to their body. So I was lucky I saw that article. And I didn't know that the baby and the cat would be such a hook for me. But after I saw Joe and started with him, I got my first cat. But it wasn't because of what he had said, and this is what he had said and believed. Of all the Almighty's creations, the superior one was the cat. It does everything the best. Then I didn't know that, but I knew I needed a cat because I didn't ever sit down. I just was never still. I'd go to bed at night, and the rest of the time I was in motion. So that was really a good response to that article that I'm grateful for. There's only few people were there. It wasn't if dancers were there, but he was not known. He was on the fringe.
I'm thinking about all the dog lovers out there. They probably don't want to hear cats rule.
Oh well, no. He said that they are the most superior of God's creations, and that they function better than any other creature. He didn't say they ruled. He probably ruled his cat, or tried to. He had one in the studio for many years, and unfortunately I was too late to meet that cat. But I think he loved animals, and sometimes he would go with a friend who's written a book now called The Caged Lion,
Yes.
John Steele. And John he was sort of adopted by Joe, and they'd go out walking, and they'd sit in the park, and they'd watch all the animals. He loved it. He loved nature. He was a part of nature, Joe was. Not an intellectual man, more natural man than that.
And it's reflected in his work.
Well, the thing I think that was the most surprising is that he arrived in the U.S. in 1923. 1926, he opened a studio. From 1926 to 1966, he did the same thing over and over and over and over, repeated himself with whoever came into him. And I think that's a hard thing to do. He was a genius at repetition.
But animals repeat.
Yeah, and so do we. An awful lot of a day is repetitive. Just keeping yourself clean, keeping the house clean. I think everything, Darian, is both and. It's creative, new, and repetitive. So we're always in a kind of tension between opposites. But Joe didn't ever criticize me when I was there, when I thought up something new to do. He would watch that, and then he'd say to me, "That's good. Just be sure you're using your whole body." He always let us create. Romana, when I was with her, you couldn't change one thing, or you'd be way down one part of the room, and you wouldn't know it. You were just doing something new, and you'd hear this voice coming. "That's not Pilates." You couldn't do it, but she was trying to rigidify it, stabilize it, so that she could own it. And that's a different kind of need, I think she was freer than that in her own time, but not with the clients.
What was the difference between Joe and Clara teaching-wise?
Oh my God, what is the difference between any two people teaching-wise? Nobody teaches like anyone else. But, I never saw them in 6.5 years, twice a week, ever give a lesson. They did not give a lesson. Hannah did the work, or Bob Seed came in and he did the work, but they watched, and then they would come over and give you a pointer and give you a cue. And Clara was a thinking intuitive. She saw who you were, she saw where your body was, and she would give you something really right to the point of what you needed. And one time she put her hand on my right rib cage, and she said, "Here." That's all she said. I still can feel her hand, and I'm still working on that spot. Joe didn't see it. Joe just saw you, I think, as an extension of himself. You were a body, and a body that he wanted to guide into the work that he believed you needed to do. And he never learned your name. He never cared about any part of you other than that you were there doing his work. You didn't see, he didn't see the subtleties of you.
Wouldn't it be fascinating to analyze him now as an analyst?
No, because he was not curious. You know,
Oh,
he was a thinker, and he lived that life. He didn't really feel much. I think feeling was very lacking, and intuitively, he would probably have once in a while come up with something that was remarkable, especially if a client, now maybe a famous person, and there were some of those they called Joe, and he'd go over to the house. And he went over to the Vanderbilt house, one of them once, and one of the Vanderbilts was in a fetal position in the bed, not able to move out of fetal position. Now that challenged him. So he got that woman totally opened up by teaching her the tower on the Cadillac. So, he would become intuitive if only if he had to. Otherwise, just let's do it. Just do it. He was a character. No.
yes. Did you ever spend any time with him outside of the studio?
No, I never saw him dressed in anything except that bare chest and his he was interested in me once, and he had me come into his private quarters to feel something about my low back that he needed to have more bare skin in order to feel it right. In my case, I was I to this day, and now I'm in my 91st year, I still come across as kind of innocent. It's born in me. And there was no womanizing with me, except he had me, he said, take everything off except your underpants. So I took my tights off. I took my leotard off. Now he said, lean on your knees on this table that was a low table inside the door of his house, and sit on your feet. And then he was poking away at my low back with his hands. And then he said, all right, you can get up now. And so I stood up, and he said, you could have been a contortionist. Something about the makeup of my pelvis. And I said, well, that's interesting. But then he looked across at me, about the 6 foot of distance, that we're required now with the COVID. And he said, it's a shame you didn't develop. Because I was about 32 then. I held my breath until I was probably 55. I was not breathing. I was full of spirit, full of intelligence, full of curiosity, and I did it all on that, but not enough to develop a breast. Because when I began to finally yawn and breathe at 55, my breast came in then. It was a muscle that was never being used. And I said to Joe, when he says, he looks at my probably 32A cup boobs, cute little things, and he said, it's just a muscle. And I guess it's true, because I was not using that. And I said, Joe, I was my father's third little girl. I was my father's darling. There was no incentive in me at all to develop boobs. I said, my sisters are older than me. They have fine boobs. And that's when he said, it's just a muscle. So I thought, well, I went home, and there's this little thing you could put in your hands, and you push the heels of your hands together and make the spring work. And I tried that a little bit, and you see every time you make your heels, the hand hit, your boobs jump a little bit. And I worked on it probably 3 or 4 days, and I thought, I don't give a damn about this. My husband at the time didn't give a damn about it. But literally, when I started to yawn and we became animal enough to breathe the way an animal breathes, that took 26 years, then I got boobs like anybody else.
I love that story.
That's a unique story. But it has a mythic side to it, because the comment when he said, it's a shame you didn't develop, looking right at my little boobs, that and I don't mind telling the story. I think it's a sweet story. And he was very gentlemanly with me. And they have turned that sentence into anything that they might think I should be that I'm not. And so one time having a dinner party in at PMA, and we were down at Disneyland in Orlando, Florida, and I was having a dinner with Wendy Arbuckle and the gals from Austin, Texas. We were having a good time. We were laughing away, and then another long table was Balanced Body, and it was Kathy Grant and Blossom Crawford, and it was all those people. It was Nora and Al, and and Al came over to my table, and he said, "You're having more fun over here than we're having there." And I laughed, and he said, "What is this about? It's a shame that Mary Bowen didn't develop." They're telling that story, and I couldn't even at that moment remember what he was talking about. But I looked at him and I said, "I think I'm overdeveloped." He said, "I think so too." But when I got up to my room after dinner, it was like a cat with the hair going up. I thought, what were they referring to? Um, and I think they were referring to that I didn't become a training center. I didn't have my way to teach everybody the same way that Mary Bowen teaches, and I don't believe in that. I don't believe that any of us should do it the same way. I believe we should find our own way, and I like to teach one-to-one or one to small groups or workshops just to encourage you to explore what your own unique creative self could be. So but I thought that's what they're saying, and it always amused me. I think they got that letter. They got that letter in Rome when they were in Rome with Pilates on tour. I heard that. And then one time I was doing Pilates on tour with them in Boston, and a man came up and he was taking my section. And I said, "Well, why did you decide to come to see this part of Pilates on tour?" He said, "Well, I read in the paper," and he read part of my letter that I had written to them, because I had written to them, you have to realize that no part is more important than the other. Our psyche is the way we experience life is we think, we feel, we intuit, and we live in a body. We're sensate. No one of those is more important than the other. And the prejudice is that thinking is more important. Well, it's not, because thinking can't even know what it is to be a body. It doesn't know what it is to feel. It doesn't know what it is to intuit. It only knows what it is to think. So I wrote them that, and I said, don't put too much emphasis on thinking. Too much is at stake. I said, I decided to go to the school of the self. That's the hardest school you can go to. And that was my letter to them. And he was reading part of that in the newspaper. So then I knew they got it.
Speaking of your Jungian training, how did you first hear about Carl Jung? How did that show up in your life?
Before I went to see my analyst, I had read Modern Man in Search of His Soul. And it's a very little paperback book that gives key philosophy of his. You can see the sense of him. And I had been a philosophy major in college. I was so heavy in profundity in those years that I was probably going to be a philosophy professor. And when I would ask questions in class, the professor would one of them, this lovely older man, he said, could you please, when you ask a question, try to be less cosmic? I mean, that's how I was. But when it came to really deciding, am I going to go on to grad school? Is it going to be all philosophy? Because I wanted to know the answer to everything. And I wanted to know it from 17. Those years, you can't know it. You never can. But that was such an appetite in me. But at the same time, I was always in theater from the time I was in grammar school, because it was natural for me to just perform and be anybody. And so I thought, no, I think I'll just go into theater. So for the 20s, I did all kinds of theater. I did comedy. I did serious stuff. I did stand up a little bit. I was very effective making people laugh. And then all my friends, by the time I turned 29, decided, you can be it. You can be a new big comedian. There's no reason you can't be. And what nice, that was a nice kind of compliment. But one of the men in who was a director for radio, I used to do radio shows also, and he said something to me that stuck with me. He said, "You do everything very well. Any character, any voice. Who are you?" And that was the point. I could be anybody. I could mimic anything. I could sound different. I could throw my voice anywhere. And and I didn't know why I would not go on with that push from them to go for big time. I didn't know why, but I thought, well, maybe I'm a neurotic who can't say yes to things. So some of my friends from Yale were seeing this man, a lovely Dutchman, had come over. He was a Jungian analyst, both he and his wife, and they loved it. And so I thought, I'll go see him. So I started with him to see, well, why can't I say yes to being a big comedian? But it never came up. We just got into the dreams, and that was from 29 all the way to 47. I mean, I went so far down that I don't think that man ever thought I was going to come back up. I just dreamed my head off, and I lived a parallel life to the life that we live in the day. And the bigger life for me was the life the dreams were revealing for me. But I was going to have to learn to be animal, to be natural, to be part of nature, because I was such an intuitive and I was going so fast. I could see so much. And the dreams were always trying to show me, go for the thing you're not. Go for that. And I think one of the last dreams I showed my analysts was I was lying on my side in the garden, and I was counting drops of saliva coming out of the mouth of an insect. And he threw his arms up and he came down hard on the arm of his chair and he said, "God damn it to hell."
Oh my.
He said, "You have to go so damn deep." And then after that, it wasn't long after doing that with the insect that I had a dream that said, "You have gone deep enough, now start filling in the hole." That's how practical it was. And by 41, I was all the way out, and I'm easy to be with now, but I was magical, I think, because there's nobody that didn't want me to analyze their dreams. They just came. And I didn't ask to be an analyst. I turned into one by my own journey. And then I went to supervision just to be sure. But I didn't need another thing. I was safe to be with. I'd gone all the way to the bottom and back. And that's what makes a person safe to be with, believe me. You're not going to assume anything about anybody, because really, we can hardly know ourselves well enough, let alone tell someone else what to do. We can't say that. We really can't say that.
You have all of this Jungian training and experience, and then you meet Joseph Pilates and Clara.
Well, I don't have it. I don't have any of that training when I meet them. When I meet them and I meet Joe, and he says, "You come 3 times a week." And I said, "Joe, I come from a train above New Haven, Connecticut. I think I could only do 2 times a week." And then he makes a sound if he didn't get his whole way, he would go, it would seem like he swallowed his tongue or something. And that was his, all right, if that's all I can get. So I started with him. I also started with the analyst, 29 years old, and I got my first cat all in that year. And that became like key parts of my life. I still have cats. I need cats. I need cats to remember to not always be active. I need cats to remember, try to put yourself first. A cat does. Dogs don't. But a cat does. And we're trying as women to learn that for the first time in history, I think.
Yes. So, Mary, with the time we have left, these 2 disciplines, combine them, Pilates plus Psyche. How did that happen? How did that
Well,
come about?
when I was with Romana, I was asked by my clients who do the analytical work with me to please explain what you do on the machines that were in the back of my office up in Massachusetts. So I went to Romana and I said, Romana, what should I say to them? And I I didn't know she was suing people. She was, for 25 years going to try to own the method. So she was really trying to stop any competition. But she said that you did the right thing to come to speak to me. Now that's where intuition helps, you see. She went and she talked to, I think, her lawyer, and she came back and she said, you may teach your friends. And now she's got me all figured out as a Pilates person. And I'm not thinking of that yet. She's seeing it. She said, you have to make up your own name for it. You cannot call it a Pilates studio. You can then have to say that you base it on the Pilates method, what you do, because that allowed her still to own it, you see. She had to make sure that this was not another maybe law case or someone that would prevent her. At that point, she worked 25 more years before that thing was decided that nobody can own it. So she said, go ahead. And I did it 20 years separately. I'd go and do my analytical work in my office, one-to-one, which is non-directive. Then I'd go over to my studio in the big building that Alec made all my machines. And then it was very directive, and I'd be there all day Saturday. And part of the week I'd be in Massachusetts, part of the week I'd be in Connecticut, and 2 days I'd be in New York. For all the years, from 1959, it was to New York every week. And then it was many years from 1975. I was going to Massachusetts too. So I would be Sunday and Monday in Connecticut, Tuesday and Wednesday in New York, Thursday in Connecticut, Friday and Saturday in Massachusetts. And that's how I lived my life, just like a little hamster. And I got to the point where I had 11 cats at one point. They all went in the car with us up to and came back down. And then we got dogs, and then the dogs would go to. Nature is always needed to be right there with me. I love to have the natural creature nearby because it keeps your mind from getting too active. Brings you down to earth. I love them anyway.
In your Pilates plus Psyche, you work with people, though, not just locally. You work with people now internationally because of Zoom.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've been going to workshops all over the world. And now with Zoom, they're calling on me. I did it for BCP, Body Control Pilates, just a week or two. I did 2 of them. And I had about 100 people in each group, and I'm just teaching. It's lovely. It's lovely. And I'm going to go do that for Pilates Alliance in Switzerland. They're going to have one. We'll see what they do. I think that the COVID-19 has in one way extended Pilates. It shows us there are more ways than being body on body. I can't get my computer to go to my studio across the yard yet. So I haven't done that, but I'm teaching all kinds of ways on Zoom.
How did you actually come up with this idea of taking Pilates and your Jungian training? Was there something that happened that got you to bring the two together?
Well, for the longest time, 20 years, I thought this is really lovely. I have the non-direct kind of work with people in the analytic frame of work, and then I have the directive kind of work when I go across town to the studio. And I thought that's kind of neat to have that parallel. But then one day, someone was teaching a woman at the Pilates studio, and she was having a nervous breakdown. The woman was just wildly upset because she couldn't understand why she couldn't do what the teacher's asking her to do. And she was an intuitive thinker. She was not in her body yet. So I just had to step in, and I had to explain to this woman, look, you will do that when the time is right. It's perfectly natural that you can't do that now because of your type. You're not in your body yet, and that's why you're so upset with your feeling too. Your feeling is it's young. And so I made her calm down, and she just altogether accepted then that she wasn't going crazy. And other people overheard this and saw the transformation in this woman, and then they all wanted both parts of me. We want to have the analyst here too. All of us want that. So from then on, it was just a natural invitation. Again, I was asked to do it. I didn't think it up. And so by 5 years' time, year 2000, when PMA began, it was Pilates plus Psyche. It had really become a way that I teach. And I could say, well, okay, I addressed the whole person, not just the body. Joe addressed the body, the whole body, which is brilliant that he did that, saying it's everything you do, you ought to know right every moment, your whole body's in on it. And I added to that the whole person. Well, then that means the conscious and the unconscious, because more of us is unconscious than conscious. So I have, in teaching and in learning Pilates, I address it. Of course, there's the body that's coming in, person's coming in with, but that's not all they're bringing in. They're bringing their whole self in, and that needs to be part of their lesson. And the more you get to know someone, if you can know even the type of someone, you'll understand why they're having difficulty. They'll understand why you might be impatient with them, because your own type is also in the way. You get a sensei thinker there with an intuitive feeler or a thinking intuitive, and nobody's getting along. They can't understand, well, why can't she do it? And the thinking intuitives wondered, why doesn't she intuit why I can't do it? So there's a lot of messed up things from not understanding what you can expect to do and what you can't expect. And the best lesson is when you address and try to connect them with the deepest part of them. When you do that, a huge energy comes in and spirit comes in. So little by little, if you work with a person long enough, you're going to be way much more than working with their body. At least I am. One person I asked not to come again. You know, all the years for 45 years I've been teaching. Big, tall gerontologist, physician, a lovely woman, very lovely. She was just like a block of stone. And she closed her eyes. Anything I said, I tried to engage that woman. I knocked myself out with comedy. I could not get couldn't get a response from this woman. And I was 70 at that point. I'd been teaching since I was 45. And I said, may I ask you if you're enjoying this work? Well, she took a long pause, and she was honest. She said, I'm always looking for something I can enjoy. So, of course, she wasn't. And I was at that point when I didn't want to knock myself out for somebody that didn't have more spirit in it. And when we got to the door, I just said, you know, if you can come back wholeheartedly, come back. She couldn't. She never came back. But, you know, if I'd had her in my analytic office with that same problem, like no feeling for anything, I had sat with her 20 years and had the patience. And I did that with one of the deans in the University of Massachusetts. It took 20 years to get her to her feeling. And in that case, that was appropriate, but not in body work. We've got to give and take there. It's a lot of work to work with the body. You need some give and take. You need to have some fun. You need to have... A person's very brave to even be trying to help your body, and the person there is very brave to bring their body in to be helped. We're none of us totally happy with our bodies.
Yes. May I ask you a question about Clara?
Yeah.
Did you spend enough time with her to get a sense of who she was inside?
Clara was very closeted. And even John Steele, writing now about the caged lion, when he's writing his book about Joe, he could not say he knew Joe, and he knew him the best of anybody, because they did not share anything interior. And Clara was a thinking intuitive. that's not going to be an easy feeling person. What we did with Clara, because she spoke, they neither one of them spoke much. They just worked with you. With Clara, she saw who you were, and so she gave you the help that you needed, and you felt so grateful to her. And because she spoke so little, you assumed she was much more warm and wonderful than she was. We assumed wonderful things about Clara, and truly wonderful was that she was the support for Joe. She kept him steady. She kept it solid, and she kept his mood not to be worried. And he needed her. And Hannah lived with them. Clara, Hannah, and Joe were a threesome. And long after they were all dead, Bruce King revealed that Hannah had been Joe's mistress. And Hannah was a very mannish-looking woman with strong arms and strong legs, and not anything about sex even possibly being revealed. But I think by the time I was with Joe, he was 76, and he was not playing around anymore, which they say he did do, but I don't know. He was fine. He was a gentleman as far as I always saw him. But he evidently, Clara, you would not be able to not tire of this. I mean, especially when you're a thinking woman, you're not so much, neither one of them had much feeling. But they were good together. They were a team. And evidently the workhorse for the body was Hannah, even with Joe. So Bruce said, we talked about it because he had a little apartment on the same floor that they lived on. I think they even shared the bathroom. I don't know. It was a very modest life. But he said, my God, he said, did they fight at night? Who fought at night? I said, I'm about 50, 60 at that point. And he said, Joe and Hannah. Now, he'd come to her room, and that was really a fighting match there. And you can imagine, it took a woman that strong to not be overridden by that man. So there they were, and Clara, I just really, truly believe, was very grateful to Hannah. I really believe that. And Hannah and Clara were very fond of each other, and they were all fond of each other, and that was a family. And Bruce said, Friday, Clara would go up to the country to Beckett, and she would clean the house, and she would make a lovely dinner, and then later on, Hannah and Joe would arrive in the car together. And I said, what? I said, you would not get an American wife. But you know, it taught me so much to hear that you can never know anyone. You cannot judge anything. That threesome really worked. And it was heartfelt. And when Joe died, Clara was so sad and felt that it wasn't right that he wasn't there. And she and Hannah tried to carry on, which I didn't even know, because I'd gone over with the teacher I had in the studio then, Bob Seed, when he opened. I thought they'd close, but they tried. And those two women were completely deep friends. And Bruce loved Clara, and Clara loved gay men. I think it was just no problem at all they had together. And these Bruce and Ron Fletcher all had dance companies, but Bruce said he really loved Clara, and he said when she died, she gave him one of the treasures of her life, her down comforter. That's how little they had, you see. It was very much a life of service, giving to each other, giving, very simple. And you paid $5, and then it went up to $7. And a lot of them came in 2 or 3 times a week, but they didn't really have much. They had a life of service. We're here talking to each other because they lived that life.
Yes.
They really believed in the method, and that's all Joe ever talked about. And John said they never talked about anything ever, about politics, ever, or family, nothing. They just lived it. Yeah.
Yes. They ate it, drank it,
Yeah, they lived it. And he got a pot. He drank too much and he smoked too many cigars. And he didn't end up, you never do, being the perfect representation of your greatest philosophy. But I loved him for his belief in what he did. And the 2 days before he died, John was at his bedside in the hospital. And Joe, all drugged up and not much left of life in him. And he says, the whole world will be doing my method. He got it out in some way. And it is. It is. It didn't happen in his lifetime, but it happened since. And I know that he didn't go right over. He haunted me. He haunted me in dreams. He haunted me in first dream the minute Ramana said I could teach. He knew that was happening. He came into the dream right away, and he came into my analytics studio in Massachusetts with his little bare chest and his little shorts, just Joe, and he said, I want you to only do Pilates. And I was doing 3 states a week and 11 cats and a husband and a sailboat and 2 professions going. I said, Joe, I cannot only do Pilates, but I promise you I will always do Pilates. And he did that thing with his tongue that he'd done in life, that's his acceptance. And then he came, that dream was certainly while he was dead. That was in 1975 when she said, you may teach. And then 1981, I'd opened a big studio in a big department store. 4 of my clients were buying this big place, and they said, have your studio anywhere in the whole place. It was as big as a block, this building. And I had that thing going, and my husband made all the machines. And wow. I'm teaching, and then Joe comes in a dream. Now, this was really beautiful. This is 1981. He died in 1967. He's still watching. And he came, I was teaching someone, I looked at the door, and there were chairs that someone could sit at and see, what are you doing here? There sat Joe. And I said, excuse me, I'll be back. Went over, and I sat on his lap. And I said, Joe, I'm trying. And he said, I know you are. And that was so weird. That's the most feeling I ever felt from the man. He was very carefully making sure this thing happened as long as it took. By the year 2000, when it was no longer a lawsuit, everyone was free to do it, no more dreams, he got his way. And now it's in the whole world. He got his way. He didn't give up by dying. He taught me that.
Have you written about that account?
No, I just tell it when I have a chance to.
It's beautiful. I think everyone wants to know it.
He was a kind of character, and he was not anyone that would care about you, but you loved him. There was something genuine there.
Innocent.
And just so simple that he believed, do this, and it will make you better.
Yeah.
And we found out it was so, and now we all do it so many different ways. And that's what I want to always support. Don't ever just do it the same way. Don't think there's one way to do it. Let it grow in you. Let your experience grow, and combine it with other things if you need to. Let yourself enter Pilates more and more. And it's still coming into my body.
Yes.
Still coming in. I mean, I believe in being creative. I don't believe in being rigid. And some of us are rigid still, and okay, if that's good for them, but they're not discovering the beauty of it.
They can coexist, can they not?
They can still exist. They get people started, and they just miss a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand.
And I'm friends with everybody. I don't say there's only one way to do anything.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're in Connecticut, right? And I know that you travel around the world. Maybe not right now, but you travel around the world. You see people from all over via Zoom.
Well, no, a lot of them come to me. I'm in Massachusetts, Connecticut, and in New York City.
I see.
I still have the three, but they come to me when we're all traveling and in each other's presence for 2-day mentoring, 14 hours all on themselves. We do 2 days. You do the psyche, we do the body, and that person goes out different.
Oh, I love it.
That person goes out ready to go again.
I love it, Mary. I want to
Very
join. It sounds fantastic.
I want you to come.
Thank you, Mary.
Yeah.
Of course, we will stay in touch. I just want to wish you continued success and keep spreading all of your joy and your knowledge.
Well, it comes out in a natural way when needed. You know, when you say write a book, or did you write it? That's a thinking person's question. An intuitive person could write 10 or 20 books, but your job is to manifest it.
Understood.
And when you do the deepest you do, you are the thing. And that you can't do and write about it at the same time. If I'm ever disabled, I'll write about it. But as long as I'm moving like a kid, I'm not. I'm 91. I'm still flexible like a cat. It's good. It's a good life.
Yes.
I'm glad you're doing it, Darian.
Yes, me too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mary. We'll see
Thank
each other
you.
at some point.
Yeah. And how about yourself? You email me still. Keep in touch.
Yes.
I want to know how this goes. I want to know how you're doing.
Yes.
And I'd like to have a dream or two.
Okay.
You write down. You'd be surprised at what's trying to cook in you.
Okay. I might be surprised. Yes. Thank you,
love.
Mary.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Okay. Stay safe.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please write a review and let others know about this show. All Things Pilates is hosted and produced by me, Darian Gold. Podcast production is provided by Audio Ephemera.
I'm Andy, the audio engineer for All Things Pilates, and I'm also a student of Darian's. My Pilates practice has strengthened my core and, more importantly, given me a new awareness of my body and its abilities. Darian's approach is challenging but fun, and I always leave my sessions feeling energized. Here are some more student comments.
I started working with Darian at her studio in West Hollywood. I lost track of Darian when she moved to Northern California and was thrilled to have her start online Zoom classes, which surprisingly worked very well. The online environment allows her to provide one-on-one coaching that is very personalized, even though you're part of a class.
I'm a local student of Darian's and have had the pleasure of taking her studio-based mat classes. I've really been appreciating the convenience that Darian's Zoom classes have offered me. She gets me to challenge myself and inspires me to keep up the practice, no matter what my circumstances might be. Thanks, Darian.
Check out dariangold.com where you can find her current class schedule and other resources. If you can't make one of her Zoom classes, then download her apps. You can find them in the Apple App Store or Google Play. And for more great interviews, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast.
Until next time, respect your elders.